Hello, I'm Kathy Jepson, and today we're going to be talking about crinoids. Crinoids are the oldest echinoderm in the fossil record, which means they're most likely the ancestor to all echinoderms. Now let's look at the anatomy of one. So basically we have the arms radiating out, and then we have the stalk, which has cirri on it, and the arms have pinnules. And basically the arms and the pinnules and the center are all called the crown, basically together. The center part is called the cup, and that is where the oral disc is, which is basically their mouth. And the stalk is basically used to hold up the animal, and the cirri can be used to help hold the stalk in place by grabbing onto itself. Now there's two different kinds of crinoids. There is the feather star, also known as a comatulid, and my apologies here, there is only one U in comatulid. These live in more shallow water, and they have cirri directly attached to their center part because they don't have a stalk. And the sea lily we saw earlier is also known as an isocrinoid. They prefer deeper water, which means it's a lot harder to study them. Now let's talk about how they move. Basically, along the arms and the stalk, they have ligaments. There are two different kinds of ligaments. There are short ligaments and through long ligaments. And the short ligaments only appear in one section, while the long through ones go all the way across sections. Now, these ligaments are incredibly useful to a crinoid. They act like muscle, and basically they use up far less energy than muscle. They are able to use them very fast, and it adds a lot of flexibility. And basically this is incredibly useful for them because they have to pretty much fight against the current. They have their fans, their crown, facing the current, and they have to impose an opposite force or they will be knocked down. And a current is usually pretty strong. So they need to have a way to stay standing. And they could use muscle. They do have muscle. However, it's not very useful to them, honestly, in this regard, because ligaments are able to hold their own without much expenditure of energy. And it's really strong, and it works very well. These are the only animal known to be able to move only on ligaments. So basically they work by contracting and detracting. So you have the straight lines here, which are contracted, and the curlicues that are relaxed, and that causes it to bend. And it's able to hold this position for an incredibly long time. Now there are two different ways that they face in order to eat or collect food. The isocrinoids have a plate shape in their arms, while a comatulid has to do a half circle because the comatulid is directly at the substrate. An isocrinoid is a lot higher up because of its stalk, so it has a lot more room spread out. Now the isocrinoid is able to keep its stalk at a 90-degree angle in order to face the current. And this 90-degree angle is just before the arms. Which again is where these ligaments come in handy. Now, in order to get the food into their mouth, they are basically catching the particles with their pinnules, and then they move the food directly to the back of them. So this is a view of the back side of the arms. So you can see here the current is coming to the front and then it goes up and over the arm. So the back of it has very little current, if any, which means that the food can't be knocked out. Basically, if it came down through the front, there would be a high chance of it getting knocked out by the current, which make it less likely to actually eat the food that it catches. Basically, on the back, it has a groove with suction cups, and those suction cups are what brings down the food. And I believe there's also mucus involved in bringing the food down as well. Now, the comatulid uses its movement in an interesting way. Basically, during the daytime, it hides away in a crevice that it finds. And then during the night, it comes out to filter feed. And it is unknown whether it goes to the same exact spot, but it always does find a suitable spot with a high amount of current that it can use. Now, isocrinoids are able to move by crawling. They basically drag their stalk behind them and use their arms to move. Now, comatulids can also move by swimming, which is a very interesting ability for them. And it is actually pretty. I suggest looking up a video on that. Now, movement is very useful for escaping their predators, which are the sea urchins. There are fields of isocrinoids, and if a sea urchin comes up to them, they basically move away from it because the sea urchin has been found to have food of crinoids in its stomach, so it goes after these crinoids. And basically, if a sea urchin does catch a crinoid, it's able to break free by breaking off a bit of their body. Now let's talk about the life cycle. So it starts out an adult and it produces an egg. And once the egg hatches, it becomes a uniformly ciliated larva. That's on day 0. And then it becomes a doliolaria, which has 4 bands of cilia, and that is on day 1 after it hatches. After that, it becomes a cystidine, which is when it actually settles on the substrate, and that's on day 2. After that, a penticleroid, that's on day 21. And this is where it starts to actually look a bit like a crinoid. And after 44 days from hatching, it finally becomes a juvenile. And it basically just looks like a miniature crinoid, and it only has 2 pinnules at each arm. And then it becomes an adult. And the study I had did not say how many days it took to actually become an adult. And then, so basically, for reproduction, it has gonads on the pinnules. And they are hermaphrodites. And they can be hermaphrodites on the same animal, which basically one crinoid, one individual, can have both testes and an ovary. And a pinnule will swell with gonads when it is ready to mate, which is actually year-round. But there is an increase in mating in June, and there is less during December. And that is my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.